Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Jennie McShannon. I was born and brought up near Antrim, schooled in Belfast, every holiday in Donegal and Wexford. When I moved to London, I said I'd be back in 2 weeks. That was 20 years ago. My 3 kids are as committed to all things Irish as they are to our local Spurs team, not doing so well, and as a family we are part of the Irish community in London. I'm very proud to be part of the Irish in Britain. I was appointed as the Chief Executive. Irish in Britain was formerly known as the Federation of Irish Societies, and it's the umbrella group that linchpin for more than 100 voluntary and community organisations, groups as diverse as you could think, from the GAA to the Metropolitan Police Emerald Society, travellers groups, business groups, professional organisations, the older migrants and the new arrivals. And the interest and enthusiasm amongst our membership for everything happening at home is so strong amongst them all. For us, the announcement of a discussion involving Irish overseas in the election of the President was really important. Our members urgently instructed us at the organisation to make the voice of the Irish in Britain heard. And it focused us on the rights and responsibilities of citizenship and where we stood on it. We set up the Diaspora Voice campaign explaining what the issues are all about, organising listening events and doing our own polling. Our members shaped our submissions and they also put in their own. Nowadays, everyone knows the story. The Irish economy depends on its openness and its global reach, but we could say the same about its people. The diaspora is about our standing in the world, it's about our families, about our culture, it's about understanding who we are. We're not out there waving placards, but 86% of the people we have polled think that citizens should be voting in the presidential elections. I say fair play to them. Taking an interest in public affairs of the country and casting an informed vote is an act of civic responsibility, and so let's have more of that. Irish citizens abroad aren't out just there complaining. We want to play our role, make a difference, and so many have such a real stake, houses and families here at home. But if citizenship means anything in a democracy, it means the right for all adults to vote equally. If you take away someone's right to vote, you better have a good reason, because no one can explain why going to London to look for work means you can have your votes removed, whether you mean to come back next year or not. And I would say let's give it its proper name. It's disenfranchisement, and it ought to end. OK, so the distance does count, but with mobile phones, Facebook, Skype and everything else online, why should Irish citizens have their vote taken away just because they rented a flat in Liverpool and are watching the match today in their local Irish pub? We think migrants should be able to carry on voting in their own constituencies for at least 15 years, and that's the same as British citizens overseas get to stay on their constituency register. Now, on the right to vote, as many have pointed out, just to vote for the President would be a huge honour, but most every other country allows their citizens to vote in all their national elections, so why not us? And I think we have answered the arguments head on in our submissions. The no taxation without representation point's a non-starter. The Irish overseas contribute to the exchequer all the time, and if voting was down to tax, you'd be taking it off all the people here who are on welfare and the thousands of unpaid carers. Here's another argument: the voting isn't compulsory. If you think it's a bit intrusive, or you've forgotten what the different parties stand for and you're fed up with the whole thing, you don't vote, but you don't lose your right to vote. We've looked into what happens in other countries and where they give their citizens overseas a vote, and I can tell you it's not swamping that's the issue. It can be the lack of interest, and that can be the same issue here, at home and abroad. Some people do turn their backs on the country and lose the connection. There can be a drift, but our polling says that 72% think Irish overseas should get votes for the Dáil or their form Seanad, and 74% support overseas votes in national referenda. I think that shows a real passion for our rights. The Irish in Britain submission for today's discussion looks at what needed to be done to maximise participation and make sure elections are fair. Here's what we think is needed: an accurate register of overseas citizens kept up to date, encouraging participation of potential voters to take up their citizenship and get on the register, practical arrangements for voting at embassies and designated polling stations, better arrangements for postal voting and online voting, and a review of electoral law and rules and funding to prevent fraud. And then, as the Convention looked at this session on Dáil reform, measures to encourage the participation of women and underrepresented groups. The important thing is to think, yes, in principle, Irish overseas citizens should get the vote in presidential elections, end the disenfranchisement, let migrants hang on to their votes for at least 15 years. And should that extend to the votes for the Dáil and referenda? Well, we think yes. but we do recognise that people at home may need to be persuaded, and it must be fair. So let's look at what happens in other countries. The reserve constituencies seem to work pretty well for overseas voters in France and Italy. Could we do that here? And let's allocate some time and look at those options. Look at history. Every step to extend the franchise was seen as risky and dangerous by some. Votes for the nobles, votes for the men of no property, votes for women, votes for the under 21s, but yet every step was the right step. So to finish, the Irish and Britain message to citizens assembled here today and those watching around the world: you here have the opportunity to do something so big this weekend. The Taoiseach and the Tánaiste described the convention as a vehicle for profound social reform. We'll do our bit, but let's show that special affinity in Article 2. Let's give our global community a democratic heart. Thank you. Thank you all. It was a real privilege for Irish and Britain to be given such a hearing today.